Welcome everyone to another episode of Indie Reads Aloud. Today we're doing our second of 4 series episodes for Kathleen Kaska. She has this great mystery series called the Sydney Lockhart Mysteries. These are cozy mysteries that take place in historic hotels everywhere. Welcome back to the program, Kathleen.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
This is a lot of fun for me because every time you read, I get a little hooked and I get a little bit more interested in Sydney Lockhart. And then of course my TBR pile grows again. So I appreciate you coming back. Thank you. So Kathleen is originally from Texas. She now lives in Washington State with her husband. Kathleen writes the award-winning series that you're going to hear a little bit today, the Sydney Lockhart Mystery Series. It's set in the 1950s. She also wrote the Sherlock Holmes Quiz Book, which was updated and released by Lyons Press in November of 2020. She also writes the Caraway Animal Rights Mystery Series, as well as a biography of ornithologist Robert Porter Allen, the man who saved the whooping crane. This is so cool. I love talking to authors who write in multiple genres because it makes me super curious about how the ideas interlope, I should say. Even though each series is different and the characters are a little bit different, the place and the time is a little bit different, I believe that we take a little bit of each piece of our writing and subtly embed it into the next. Do you find the same is similar with
I
writing
do.
multiple genres?
I do. Writing in multiple genres kind of helps me keep my mind fresh. In other words, I like to write a certain amount of time a day. If I'm working on one book, I might hit the wall really early in the day. And so if I have another project that I'm working on, I can go back to that one and still get some work done, whereas my thought process for the other book is just kind of put on hold and kind of working the problems out, and then I can come back. So it's like giving my brain a rest. And
It's like taking that rest without losing momentum, right?
exactly.
I find the same thing. That's part of why I
Yes.
like multiple genre writing, is because while your brain is working on solving a problem in one area, you can be creating in another.
Right. Right. That's true. And I started I started writing. My first books were the trivia books that I wrote in the 90s, and that was a good education for me to begin writing my own. The trivia books were all about Agatha Christie. One was on Alfred Hitchcock, and then Sherlock Holmes. And so that gave me a great education on mysteries and solving crimes and that sort of thing. So I wrote those 3 books before I even started writing my own mysteries.
I would think that would be a wonderful masterclass in studying mystery literature. I mean, when you mentioned those books, that's some pretty cool stuff to dive
Yes,
into.
yes, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
So the book you're going to read today is The Murder at the Luther. Can you tell us a little about the Luther Hotel and why it's significant to you?
Yes, the Luther Hotel is a small hotel on the Texas coast in a little town called Palacios. In the 40s, it was in its heyday because nearby was a military training camp during World War II. And then it became a German prisoner of war camp. There were like 20,000 German prisoners in that little town, maybe 500. So the hotel was the center of the entertainment. Hollywood entertainers used to come there and entertain the troops. Guy Lombardo played there often. Rita Hayworth, Shirley Temple. So all these celebrities came to this little town. After the war ended, things kind of started to wane, but the Luther maintained. It's extremely old, and we discovered it once when we were driving around, and stayed there many times. And it's like, the best way I can describe it is like staying at my grandmother's house.
Oh, that's fun.
No, it's real cozy, and it's right there on the water, quiet little town. So that's where I decided
The
to set.
last place you'd find a murder mystery.
Right, right, exactly, because everybody knows everybody, and it's just a quaint little town. And so Sydney ends up there on another writing assignment, and this one, you really get the feeling for her sidekick, a young woman named Ruth. It's her cousin, and Ruth has a big part to play in this book. Ruth is a extremely wealthy, spoiled socialite blonde from Dallas.
Okay.
She shows up to help Sydney whether Sydney wants her to or not. And
I love relatives like that.
Sometimes she helps in the case, and sometimes she makes things worse.
Okay.
But it works really well because the two of them are so opposite, but yet they are so linked together and dependent on one another. And
they kind of make up for each other's
they
foibles.
do. They
Yeah.
do. So
Okay.
in this book, I'm going to read a passage where Ruth really screws up. And so Sydney's got to fix it. Besides
Okay.
trying to solve these murders, she's got to fix what Ruth has messed up. So that's what I'm going to read.
Awesome. All right.
And
When you are ready,
okay,
just take the microphone and read aloud The Murder at the Luther.
The Blessing Hotel is a big blue structure with a facade that looks like the Alamo. I scanned the area for Ruth Caddy and was relieved to see the back bumper sticking out from where it was parked behind the building. Rather than rushing into the lobby and demanding to know which room the deceitful mongoose, the insane Loretta Buckner, and my wealthy cousin were, I stood out the front to collect myself and contemplate my next move. I'm sure a mongoose thought he'd bought himself some time at the waterway. I considered calling the local police, but one Lionel Fogmore in my life was enough. Just then, the front door of the hotel flew open, and 4 burly men barged out, laughing and jostling. They were dressed in oilskins and smelled of salt water and tobacco. They gawked at me as if seeing a woman on the doorstep was an anomaly. One guy pulled a toothpick from his mouth and said, "Whoever you're looking for, lady, he ain't here." They all laughed and went on their way. I sidled into the front door and took a quick look around. This was definitely not the Luther Hotel. No fluff, nothing fancy, just a practical place to bunk and eat. The building was the traditional shotgun style with a long hallway down the middle. If it had a saloon, it'd make a perfect set for a Gene Autry movie. From where I stood, I could see the layout of the entire hotel. The front desk was in an open area to the left, and across the hall, a large parlor furnished with domino tables sat empty. A string of rooms lined the right hallway. Upstairs, more rooms ran along both sides of the building. Before I called attention to myself, I ducked back outside and dashed around to the back. Ruth's caddy was still there. She wasn't inside, and neither were the keys. Seems that Mongoose was smarter than me. I tucked my hair under my fedora, pulled up my collar. This time I disguised myself as a man. The last time I disguised myself as a man, I ended up with stitches in my head. This time I planned to be ready for anything. I pulled the gun from my pocket and climbed the fire escape to the second floor. Each room had two doors, a screen door in front of a wooden door. Most of the wooden doors were open, and I heard various sounds coming from the rooms. A country western radio station, friendly chatting, and heavy snoring. Only one room, tucked at the end of the hall, was closed up tight. I crept over, opened the screen, and stuck my ear to the inside door. All was quiet. I twisted the doorknob, and it turned. Before I could push it open, someone behind me spoke. "Hey, fella, that ain't your room." I slid my gun inside my jacket and lowered my voice. Without turning it around, I said, "I'm here to see the Cajun." Most folks knock. I felt him move closer to behind me. From inside the room, I heard squealing, the sound a mouse makes when you corner it with a broom, or the sound Ruth Eklund makes when she's tied up and gagged. I backed away from the door and turned around to face my interrogator, to let him know he was being a nuisance. I said through clenched teeth, "I don't have to knock. I don't have time to knock. And I don't have time to deal with you either." And to make sure he understood I was serious, I pointed the gun at him. "Now, open this door and go inside." He did as he was told. I followed him in and closed the door behind me. For a moment, I thought my assessment was wrong. Someone indeed was tied to a chair and gagged. The reason I didn't immediately recognize my cousin was because she was no longer wearing her dwar suit and Ferragamo heels. Instead, she was dressed in oversized oil worker clothes. "Hey, those are my duds," the guy said. "Give them back to me." "Untie her," I said. He looked at me, then at Ruth, and then at me again. "Hey, you two are women. Women aren't allowed in our rooms." Either he was used to guns and bound up women or shenanigans of that sort, or years of working on the oil rigs had dulled his danger threshold. "Do as you're told and no one gets hurt." Damn, I was beginning to sound like a seasoned bad girl. He fumbled with the rag tied around Ruth's head, pulling out several hairs in the process. As soon as Ruth's mouth was free, she yelled. I wondered if taking the gag off was a good idea. My hair, watch my hair." "Shut up, Ruth. You'll bring the entire crew in here. Your hairdo is beyond saving." "It don't look that bad," the oil worker said, smoothing Ruth's hair down in the back. "Don't touch me. My clothes. They took my clothes. That suit cost me $79. It was perfect for me. Dark brown enhanced my blonde hair. I'll never be able to replace it." $79? The guy said. "That's what I paid for my truck." He began untying the rest of Ruth's binding. I wanted to bang my head against the wall, shake my brains back into place so I could get a handle on this situation. I just probably end up with a matching knot. "What happened?" I sat down on the bed. The oil worker sat next to me. "My name's Pete. Mind if I listen?" At least someone's willing to listen to me. I told Sydney this was a bad idea. "You did nothing of the sort, Ruth. Arguing with her when she was in this state was a waste of time. Just tell me what happened." "These clothes stink." "That's cause today is Monday. My laundry day is Wednesday," Pete said. "Tie her up and gag her," I told Pete. He started to get up. "Oh, stop it." Ruth pushed him back on the bed. "I was sitting in my car, minding my own business, tuning in the radio." She shot a stern look at Pete. "You don't have any decent stations around here." He shrugged apologetically. Anyway, all of a sudden, I saw this big, ugly face staring at me through the window. I almost had a heart attack. Before I could do anything, he jerked open the car door and shoved me across the seat. Then he jumped in and we took off. I told you to lock the door. I did. I locked your door. Jeez. That was Mongoose, I said. What happened when you got to the hotel? He told me that if I made a sound, he'd shoot me. We came up here and Loretta Buckner was waiting. Women aren't allowed. Shut up, Ruth and I yelled. She was madder than the devil, Ruth said. She wanted to know what he was doing with this perky little bimbo. Bimbo. She called me a bimbo. That's her favorite word. She called me one too. What happened next? Mongoose gave her the envelope. She tore it open and threw the money on the bed. Since the document wasn't in there, she went ballistic. She threatened to kill us both. Then Mongoose pulled a gun on her. He demanded his money. She slapped him. She slapped a guy who had a gun on her? Pete asked. She must be one tough woman. She's insane, Ruth said. Did you get any idea what the document was? Something important. Oh, Lord in heaven, we know that. Don't shout at me. I've been kidnapped. Again. Sorry. What about your clothes? Yeah, what about your clothes? Pete echoed. They planned to take me along as a hostage. They made me change into this awful outfit since women aren't allowed here. Loretta herself was dressed in pants. She had on a man's overcoat. I'm sure my smart suit and heels would have caught the attention of every guy here. She told Mongoose to take my clothes off. That's when I started screaming. Go ahead and shoot me, I tell them. I'm not going to let that guy touch me. That's when he grabbed me. Did he take off your clothes? Pete asked. He most certainly did, Pete gasped. But not before I got in a few good whacks. Good for you, Pete clapped. I was not about to make it easy for him. Loretta came out and back with this awful outfit. Ruth rolled her eyes and wrinkled her nose. They stole your Ferragamos? He asked. Don't make me cry. So, why didn't they take you? Loretta said that I was too much trouble. Can you imagine that? Too much trouble, little old me. They took my expensive clothes and left me tied up like a hay bale. What if I had to go to the bathroom? Or got thirsty? Or had an itch? That was rude, Pete said. It sure the hell was, Ruth said. Maybe we can find them and ask them if they'd reconsider and take you along. I sighed. Funny, Ruth said. Funny, funny, funny. What do we do now? I need my duds, Pete said. What the hell am I supposed to do? Walk around in my bare slip? Pete gasped.
That Pete sounds like a fun character to write.
Yes, he was. He was. I also wanted to add that this scene took place in another little hotel near the Luther, and that's the Blessing. It's still open today. It was a hotel built for oil workers and people who are working on the railroad. So it was mainly a place for men to stay during that time.
So sort of like a boarding house.
Sort of like a boarding house. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Where did Pete come from in your imagination? Um did you come up with him all by himself? Did he just appear one day, or did you take pieces of his personality from people you knew in real life?
No, I don't. My characters just show up. You
Okay.
know, I don't think about them ahead of time. They just show up. And most of these characters that just show up are real quirky, and they're in for a few scenes and then they go away. But there are a lot of quirky characters like that. And um, Pete doesn't show up for the rest of the book, but he was there at the moment I needed him to help me explain everything that was going on.
Sure. Yeah, I mean
And get a feeling for what the hotel was like.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's very telling when you create characters that reflect their environment. I think that just draws readers in a little bit tighter to the story.
Yeah, I do too. And so I might have to bring Pete back one day. I don't know.
I'll have to wait till he shows up again. So, what was it about the Luther that really stuck out in your head and said, yeah, there's a story here that I need to tell?
Again, the history of the hotel is amazing.
What's the
LB,
strongest piece of history that really stuck with you?
it was a place where LBJ and Lady Bird often visited. And
Okay.
he did a lot of politicking there when he was running for senator, uh, state senator of Texas. And when I was in the hotel, when I visited, I discovered in the breakfast room all these photograph albums of pictures that had been taken ever since the beginning of the hotel, ever since the opening. And also in the photograph albums were letters from Lady Bird Johnson,
Very cool.
thanking Mr. Luther for their stay. And so I just love that place. The history is just amazing. So I had no doubt that that would be the second hotel I would choose. I mean, it was already in my mind when I was writing the first story.
That's
And
awesome.
I know a lot of people in the town. I mean, it's a very small town. Um, when I had the book signing there at the little bookstore, and it was kind of funny. Uh, I the book signing was on Saturday, and so I came into the bookstore on Friday just to check everything out. And the owner came up to me and said, "Did you bring books?" I said, "What?
Oh
When did I
no.
bring books?" I said, "I thought you ordered them." She goes, "I did. I ordered a bunch, and I'm already sold out."
Oh my gosh, that's
So it was
wonderful.
the only book signing I ever had where I sold out before I even got there. So I showed up the next day with the books I had, and then we took orders.
How wonderful.
Yeah,
That's a really good problem to have.
yes, it is.
Well, I'm excited to hear about the next two books in this series. Again, we're doing a 4-book series over the next several weeks with Kathleen Kaska, and this is the Sydney Lockhart Mystery Series. So, everybody, make sure that you subscribe and come on back to the channel, either YouTube or Spotify, so that you can make sure that you hear from the next two books. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for joining us again, and I look forward to having you back.
Thanks. I look forward to coming back.